Town of Southampton Board of Selectmen's meeting for March 6, 2018 at 6 o'clock. We will start our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let me remind everyone that this meeting is being taped and telecast for future reference for people. At this point in time, I guess we will start with the appointments. We have a Jonathan Flagg as alternate building commissioner. It's my understanding that the town administrator reviewed this as well as us and is comfortable with this.
Yes, and Tom Coleman, our building commissioner, is here to give you any pieces of information you may want.
Our building commissioner.
How you doing?
Is there any concerns or anything? This is just someone that's going to fill in when you're on vacation or you're sick or something of that nature?
Yes, sir. Yeah, we have 3 others, and they're retired, and they'll be here for an emergency. I still have them as backup for an emergency, but John says he's got 7 more years, and he's in Easthampton right next door. He lives in Westfield, so it works out very well. I was lucky that he, was willing to do it because nobody else is going through the process to become certified, so.
There's a severe shortage. The workforce is developing huge gaps, not
Yes.
just in the building fields, but also in the health fields. Do I hear a motion?
Just a question. Okay, I'll second it for the conversation. He's a building commissioner in Easthampton, is that what you said?
Yes, he's the commissioner in Easthampton.
So he's
now.
fully qualified,
Yes.
okay.
Does this need to go before PQB?
I don't believe so.
Just an alternate, I think.
Just an alternate, a fill-in, yeah.
I have a motion and a second.
Well, let's
Any more
stop here.
discussion?
How do you set a rate then if it doesn't go before the PQB?
We've already established a rate historically on this. I don't know what it is, but
As an alternate? Do we have a rate, Tom?
Yes, back for Joe Feidenkevitz, Paul Tacey, and there was a few other previously. It was the same, the board had established the $40 per inspection, the same as the plumber and electrical
Okay,
receive.
good, so we're all set on that.
all in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
I was going to move Randall Kemp to the front of the pack so he could go home and get some rest for plowing, but I don't see him here.
He's sleeping.
Okay, reports to the select board. Anyone have any updates on anything?
We went to the Hampshire Regional School Committee last night. Who's the representative there for the?
Well, you were budgetary, and we were sharing the liaison.
So, we were at the Hampshire Regional School Committee last night where they passed the budget for the year. And if I'm reading this correctly, it's a 6.12% increase, and Tammy, you can go ahead, over last year. And it was approved unanimously with 1 abstention. So I guess my only comment is the amount of money that is increased, not that it's not needed, it's gonna roll down into the budget because it's gonna take all our free cash that we have now to make up that difference. So when it comes to Norris School and any of the other departments, there won't be any left. It's kind of like competing one faction against the other. So it's they needed it, but it takes away from others. So I think it's gonna be a tough year for budget.
And the huge increase is health insurance,
Yep.
which comes out to almost $300,000. Aside from that, there's an addition of .4 adjustment counselor.
Yep.
They currently have 1.6, given all the school violence and other issues. That's their hope, is to provide a more support. And also, it includes increasing coaches' salary, which hasn't been increased for several years. And lastly, a van, which they hope will offset other charges. Otherwise, it is heavily health insurance charges.
And there was a long list that they wanted to do for school protection and all that, but there's just obviously no money to do that. But there was a lot of good ideas that came out on that end of it, so I was pleased to see that. Any questions on the Hampshire Regional School budget?
Watch out for your thing there.
Yeah.
Good evening.
Evening?
I'm Barbara LaFlamme, 20 Cook Road. I would like to know if all of Southampton's residents or representatives to Hampshire Regional were present when that budget passed?
Yes and no. One was on the telephone, and the other 5 were there.
But the person on the phone voted.
I beg
Correct.
The
pardon?
person on the phone voted, so all the members were there, everyone voted in favor it, 1 abstention.
Okay. Were those voted as weighted average?
Yes, they were. We confirmed that.
Beautiful,
And
thank
We
you.
were there to do that, and Dr. Jurgensen gave us information on how it's done, and we got it today, and we were satisfied with that.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question.
I have another update from the local school committee. It's, basically a lot of concerns about the budget. They have pretty much been exhausting free cash in the last several years to balance the budget. There's no longer free cash available, and they are also looking at a huge deficit to the budget in terms of funding. So, like John said, it will roll downhill if the regional agreement favors the budget. We'll have to be having a lot of serious budget decisions.
And speaking of, it's approved by the school committee, it's got to be approved by each town, and 4 out of 5 have to approve it. And there was some, I'll say, significant increases across the other towns, so we don't know where it's going to go. And if it doesn't get passed by 4 out of 5, it goes back to the school committee for reworking.
And there was no there from Goshen at all last night, so we
You're going to have to get up.
Right.
Sorry, Greg.
Gregory Bennett, 307 College Highway, and there was no one there from Goshen at all, neither of their 2 representatives were there last night, so
Right.
I know they're having serious financial issues as well, so they could derail the whole thing just as being one of the towns
Right.
against
And
it.
Greg's
You're in the local school. Do you
I'm
want
in
to
the
say
local-
anything more about that?
Excuse me?
You're on the local school committee and liaison Hampshire Regional. Is there anything
Right.
else you want to add to what I?
Just that, yeah, the budget is really serious for us. Most of the ones we had, the increases at HRHS was due to the structural increases to the insurance costs as we had. I was at least pleased to see that they're passing on some of the increase of the cost down to the members, as well as in the form of increased co-pays and cost sharing that way. Last night's meeting. I know Erin Kuchar from the local school committee, our head's going to come to talk if she's here yet. Oh, okay. I know she's got some more significant details she's going to present a little bit later if she has a chance to speak on it. Thanks.
And the person who abstained,
Get right there.
the person that abstained last night, one of the members, it wasn't. It was because of the dissatisfaction with the unfunded mandates from the state. Regional transportation is an example of something that we have never been funded, even though they incentivized regionalization years back. Now it's only 60% of the budget, so we're losing thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years.
Margaret Larson, 9 David Street. I'm a member of the Hampshire Regional School Committee. So Goshen actually attended previous meetings and was part of some larger discussions. So they know what's coming. And it is, of course, based on populations that are coming into school. And so that's why we've seen the various increases depending on, some people are sending more kids, some people are sending less.
Any other topics from the Board of Selectmen? If not, I'll give everyone an update on the East Street Bridge project. Met with the engineers, Hoyoke Gas, and the water department out there. Hoyoke Gas is addressing how they're gonna move that gas line, because it's one of the main feeder lines through the town on that bridge, so construction can happen. Water department feels that they can address the water issue relative to turning some valves off and working around it, so that the water department doesn't seem to have an issue. The gas companies are looking at maybe putting a separate support structure there to run the gas line over the river. We're probably going to see the large pine trees on the north side of that bridge coming down in the next week or two. A lot of it depends with the tree companies, and a lot of it depends on the weather. But you're gonna see some activity there. The utility companies are supposed to be looking at taking the trees down on the south side of that bridge, because even though none of us look outside that bridge because we're trying to make sure we stay on the bridge, but if you were to look on the south side, you'd actually see the power or the communication lines run right through the trees on that south side there. The trees are on both sides of the lines, and so we're trying to encourage the electric company to take and have their crews go out there and take all those trees out. That'll help us when we do construction. I had a very brief meeting with our new conservation agent, and she informs me that she believes there's a grant that might be available to Southampton for that. It's up to a maximum of $200,000. I asked her to give me that information, and I'll correlate that and connect it with our engineers, see if there's a possibility of getting some additional money for this project. So that's another part to that. So you should see in another couple of weeks, actually, some trees starting to come down out there.
Could be tomorrow night.
It could be.
Hopefully not, but
At
it
that
could be.
point, there'll be a whole different way of paying for this. Just to know, this is only preliminary, but the discussion, if you want to, of what they think the bridge is going to look like, there's a pretty good rendition of it on Red Brook Estates Bridge that goes across that brook. You wanna,
Red Brook, yeah.
okay, off a former road. So
It's the best bridge in town.
it is the best bridge in town, and it's actually the nicest bridge in town,
Oh, the cheapest.
and the cheapest too. But yes, Tammy.
Tamara Lunas, 298 College Highway. Do you know if any preparations for like bus routes and traffic is being talked about so that locals right there would know what's going on?
There's been a lot of open discussion about shutting down that artery so that when we construct a bridge, that road is going to be closed. There's been no discussion with the schools because of the fact that we're looking at summertime.
Beautiful. Okay,
That's
thank you.
the hope. And a lot of these things in planning phases are hopeful.
Yeah.
Is to demolition the bridge, put another bridge in, so that by the time we get into September, October, sort of like Safe Routes to School,
Yeah,
there's a bridge there and things come back to normalcy.
okay.
But then somebody doesn't move in a utility pole, and then everything gets backlogged and stuff like that. But that's the plan right now.
Okay. No, I was talking with a couple people there, and that was their question they asked me to bring up.
Yeah,
Thank
in fact, we're discussing this even right now. This has been discussed for the last good 6, 8 months. Anyways, that's the update on the East Street Bridge project. If nothing else, the town administrator's report.
Thank you, Charlie. And just a reminder to the members of the Select Board that the MMA Annual Spring Legislative Breakfast Meeting will be held on Friday, March 16th, beginning at 8 a.m. It's going to be in Pittsfield in their City Hall Council Chambers, 70 Allen Street. If any of you would like to attend, just let Velda or myself know, and we'll RSVP for you. We did receive 3 quotes, and the fire department used mobile home to be placed next to the fire station at 204 College Highway for additional space. The low quote was from Emergency Temporary Housing LLC in South Grafton, Mass. for a 2015 mobile home in the amount of $27,400. I will prepare the contracts for the vendor's signature, and we'll schedule the delivery along with the fire chief.
Hey, Ed, is that on wheels, or you have to put gravel base down, or?
Temporary wheels,
Yeah,
probably.
it comes, they'll wheel it in. It's got 2 sets of wheels in the middle, but when they bring it in and put it on site, they actually block it up.
Yeah, block it up?
Yep. I had the opportunity to tour the highway garage last Wednesday. It was larger than I had anticipated, and while it is in decent shape for its age, several safety concerns were noted, and the highway superintendent, Randall Kemp, will contact an electrician to make diagnosis and repairs, which I believe he already has. So, I also was invited and attended the Council on Aging coffee group a week ago. It was a good opportunity for me to meet some more of the Southampton residents. I will be putting out requests for quotes for the real estate appraisal services for the Glendale Road easements this week. I attended the Hampshire Regional School Committee last night, along with members of the Select Board. And for the Select Board's information, and my role as Chief Administrative Officer, after being notified by the Highway Superintendent that we're about to deplete our funding appropriations in the snow and ice accounts, I declared an emergency and authorized deficit spending for the snow and ice accounts for the remainder of the 27-18 winter season. At last meeting, I was asked to check and see if a municipality may pay someone less than the state minimum wage of $11 an hour. I have checked, and municipalities are required to pay the federal minimum wage, which is currently $7.25 an hour, but not the Massachusetts state minimum wage. So that $10 an hour was illegal. Upcoming, the next Board of Selectmen's meeting will be March 20th. April Select Board meeting dates are still to be determined, and there will be, depending on when the snowstorm hits, there will be a department heads meeting tomorrow, Wednesday, March 7th at 10 a.m. And that's it for me.
Thank you.
Anything else? Then I'm going to take Randall Kemp out of order so that he can get some rest tonight. I would have taken you to first thing, but you didn't show up.
Had some errands to run. Randall Kemp, Highway Superintendent. I was asked to give a quick update on the status of my department. As Ed alluded to, we've expended our winter expenses account, and winter wages may be approximately 2 weeks short. A lot of this will depend on how much time we have to put into the storm tomorrow and the ones in the coming weeks. We continue to address potholes and are putting out 2 to 4 tons of asphalt per day. I did some math today, added up all the asphalt we've used to date from the beginning of the fiscal, and it's 1,138 tons of asphalt we've put into our roads. My department has been battling the flu. It's been going through. It's been challenging to keep staff in. I've submitted my initial 2019 fiscal budget and completed initial estimates for Hampshire Council of Governments Cooperative Purchasing Program. Those went in last week and the week before. I've continued to meet with residents, answer questions, and attempt to obtain donations of easement for the Glendale Road Reconstruction Program project. Ed talked about the appraisals for those. Once those are finished, the state will certify right of way, and then we can move forward with the state bidding out the project for construction. Charlie, you went over the meeting we had today.
Yeah.
So I can skip that one. You also talked about the light repair, replacement, and other electrical issues at the highway department, and a couple at town hall. I've got a proposal from an electrician who also alerted us to an Eversource rebate program, which will pay for half the cost of replacement of our switch to LED lights. So I think it's a no-brainer to do the upgrade as we're having this other work done. I'm working on a replacement of one of the oil heaters in our mechanics bay. It has burned completely through the housing, so it's been off. We've been relying on our waste oil heater for heat in there for the last couple months, and I'd like to get the regular heater back up and running as well. People may have noticed the school zone light, the new one, has had a problem. The lights aren't blinking. I had someone come in and look at it, as well as the red flashing stop lights at Pomeroy Meadow and Glendale, and the ones at East and County roads. They're little LED flashers, solar powered. The solar panels need to be replaced. I guess they've reached the end of their lifespan, so we have to have those replaced in order to have them function properly. Right now, if we get a cloudy day, 2 cloudy days in a row, they go out. I'm working on reviewing job descriptions for the PPB per their request. Also working on the 2017 annual report of the Highway Department. Continued work on stormwater and underground storage tank compliance. And in my role as transfer station manager, last week we submitted our annual recycling survey and our recycling dividends spending report to the DEP. And if I missed something, it's because I've got a lot on my mind about what's going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
Any questions?
I saw a picture of a truck with a cracked frame on it. How's that going?
That's the one we would like to replace. And it's not the, it's
Is it one
not
of
the
the ones
frame, it's the bed.
Is that one of the ones you currently are using to plow the roads?
Yep.
Okay.
And I sent everybody a photograph so you got an appreciation of the fact that
Yeah.
this is not a quick fix by any stretch. This is a replace the truck situation.
So is that truck out of service? We're down one truck now? You're still using it?
Yep. It's not the frame of the truck, it's the support beams for the dumping bed. So the mechanic, it's the mechanic's truck, the mechanic continues to monitor it, and if any time it becomes a safety issue, that truck will be off the road.
A question, I don't know if it's for you, Randall, or for Ed, but when we take the easements along, whatever street we're getting easements for to do some work, if somebody wants to donate it, do we write them a letter to give them a tax donation for the value of what that easement would be if we had to pay them?
I'm not aware that we've
No
done
one's
anything
ever
like that.
requested that of us.
But I mean, that would be a great incentive if we can do that, because really, if you fight the town and they're gonna give you $1,500, but you say, no, I don't want it, that could be a contribution to the town, which could be taken off their taxes, which may get people to say, hey, I'm good with that, it'll help the
The
town.
problem is going to be, it isn't appraised, and therefore we don't have a dollar amount as to what the donation would be. And usually the appraisal cost is probably just as much as taking the property.
But aren't you getting the property appraised for the easements?
We've had a number, what is the number of donations?
Yeah.
And
We would be getting appraisals for the parcels that have not been donated currently, or the ones that people have outright said, no, we're not going to
So we can't
donate.
extrapolate that value into similar size? It's just a thought, I'm trying to get away with people to want to donate more than take the money from the town.
I think we've had relatively good success with people donating. A lot of people are happy to see the program go forward.
Yeah.
They're happy there's going to be a sidewalk. And there are
So you don't have any
an
concerns
equal amount
on
of
that?
people who are not happy that the sidewalk is going in.
Yeah.
And they feel that the speed on the road is going to increase when it's rebuilt.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of the way the budget's gonna be this year, $5,000-$10,000 could mean a lot to somebody,
That's
we-
Chapter 90 money.
Yeah, we put aside money from Chapter 90, which could be used for other things as well, agreed.
Okay, that's just thought.
Highway things. If you hold that money and don't use it on Glendale Road, it's still Chapter 90 money. It doesn't go into the general budget for anything else.
Oh, yes, but I mean,
wanna say
as
that
we've
'cause I want
discussed,
people-
I want money for, do something to Pomeroy Meadow Road
I
that could be
understand-
applied to that project.
And that I don't have a question about. I just wanted to make sure, because this is on camera, that people realize that if we save $10,000 on easements there, it just applies to some other highway department project.
Correct,
under
Chapter 90 money is supposed to be
It doesn't
used
mean
for roadway
$10,000 is
improvements.
Available.
$10,000 for Randall.
Yeah,
Yeah. I just want to make sure
No,
people
no,
realize.
that's a
point taken.
good clarification, yeah.
What's the life of the solar powered stop signs there?
I believe the ones that are currently in operation are 10 years old. They predate my time at the highway department, but anecdotally, 10 years. And they probably should have been replaced a couple years ago, so maybe 8. It's a couple $1,000s to replace the 4 we have to replace.
But they really stand out. I think they're a great safety feature.
Oh,
There.
I agree.
Any other questions, Randall?
Nope, hopefully it doesn't snow much.
I don't think you're going to get that wish, but
You can hope.
all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
And while Randall's here, you have one other the
Yes.
financial disclosure form.
There's a disclosure
disclosure.
form that we need to review and
Okay.
sign off on.
Yep.
Who has it handily?
I don't.
We had that.
Oh, thank you.
You guys have any questions on it? It's
No, it's a
No.
a
routine.
similar format that you've seen numerous times
Yes.
before from me.
And while you're here,
We only have electronically.
please sign one.
I don't have a
One right
paper
here,
either.
Charlie?
I just need one, and
Here,
as soon
there
as
you
I
go.
start tearing my... All right, this is a disclosure form for Randall Kemp. It pertains to his duties as the highway superintendent, and it deals with 8 Woodmar Lane and Lot E, Woodmar Lane. He's basically sold us notice, and if the board doesn't mind, I'll sign off on this. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. You want us to make a motion first?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll make the motion.
Yeah.
Somebody want to second it?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You're clear.
Did I do good?
Got it.
Am I paying attention? All these night meetings are catching up to me, my friends.
Yeah. Yes, that's their. Yeah,
Here.
that would be your concern. Yeah, yeah, you're right.
All right, moving on, resignation of Jacqueline Sears from organizing the Memorial Day Parade. Jackie has done this for years, and I understand she wants to move on. I think the first thing we should do is send her a letter of appreciation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to send a letter to Jackie Sears thanking her for the organization of the Memorial Day Parade
For many years past.
for many years past.
I'll second that.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Now opens up the question of who is going to be organizing the Memorial Day Parade?
Was there a committee that she was working with?
And it'd be nice if we could actually get her in here or talk to her to find out what organizing the parade means. Because she did a nice job. We really don't know what it means. She did it all, so.
She did. She did do it all. Ed, you want to
Ed?
invite her at our next meeting?
Sure, and she has sent us some information and some contacts from people that helped her out, so, but I will invite her to the next meeting.
Yeah,
Or at least if she can't make it, maybe she just give us an outline of what we
Yep.
gotta do.
yeah.
Sure.
And if there's anyone that's listening or in the room here that has an interest, please let us know.
I'm not seeing any hands here, so.
Charlie, do we have to vote on the resignation? We didn't do that yet. We voted on a letter to send her.
Yep.
Do you wanna vote on that, or do we
You want to
have to?
vote to accept her resignation?
Do we have to do that? I'm just asking the
I
question.
just don't know how one would be able to vote
Not-
not to take her
I understand.
resignation, but if you feel that,
Is that what we normally do or not?
Was it an appointed position is the question. If it was, we should vote to.
I don't believe it was. I believe it was something that one of the selectmen
Okay.
used to pick up on and just take care of it.
So we don't need
No.
a vote then?
I'm looking at acknowledging her for her work done and
That's-
hoping that we can find someone else that's willing to step into that role and move this thing forward. I'm not
Okay.
aware of this being any actual formal position of the town.
Ed, could you also reach out to the veteran agent in town and see if there's a recommendation in terms of?
We have not, but we can do that.
We what?
We have not, but we can do that,
Okay,
sure.
thank you.
Ed, I see 2019 budget, but I know that budget is still formulating. Do you want to give an update, or you just want to pass over it at this point? Because you just saw the school vote last night.
Well, you're the one that asked me if I could do some type of summary, just so you could,
Right, but
No.
I didn't see the summary.
It's right here.
it's here.
Oh, see, there you go.
See
The
what
guy that asked for it doesn't get to see it.
see what we have to put up with? Yeah.
It should be in your package there. I think I've got it.
So I got this at what, 3 o'clock this afternoon?
Right.
Okay,
So Ed, thank you. If you'll give us a summary, that would be great.
Certainly. And basically, the first sheet is a revenue estimate for fiscal year 2019. And the highlight of that is basically we're looking at about $281,000 in new revenues for fiscal 2019. And I'm just going to highlight some of the drivers in the fiscal year 2019 budget, and there are two columns to look at. Second column is fiscal year 2019 requests, and then what Vicki did was she went through it, and because not everyone followed the directions that Bob and Vicki had sent out back in December, that it should be level service, that the only increases really should be contractual. There were people that put in for administrative assistants, that add hours to positions and what have you. So what Vicki tried to do to the best of her ability was in that fiscal year 19 level service column to go back and pull some of those additional requests out. But if you take a look at the bottom on the very last page of the second column, you will see the request total $17,260,467.89. The revenue projections are $16,465,535, or a $794,932.89 deficit. If you go two columns to the right and look at what would be the level service, and there are different definitions of what level service might be, that amount of request at a level service would be $17,108,589.97 for a deficit of $643,054.97. So in both a considerable shortfall, but just to highlight some of the major drivers of why that is so large is, first of all, if you look at the public safety accounts, which are on the second page and the very top of the third page, the total increase for those is basically $102,000. Biggest predominant piece of that is the funding of the second and third shifts for the ambulance service. The next largest driver is, if you take a look on page 3 under education, and remember that we do know what the Hampshire Regional School budget was voted at. The numbers in there for Norris were some that Vicki worked with Bobby Jones on what level service might be and what their overall request might be, but those are not refined as of yet. But just the educational total would be an increase of $648,126 for fiscal year 19. And then the last biggest driver, which is on page 4 of the 5, about right in the middle of it, are employee benefits, which are driven by retirement contributions and group health insurance for the most part, and an requirement for another OPEB actuarial study. That increase over what fiscal year 2018 was approved for would be $122,783.17.
So Ed, all the benefits that are fixed cost for school employees are all contained in their budgets?
In their budgets, correct. So the employee benefits that you see broken out there separately would be for all the municipal employees.
Ed, could you post this on the town website as an information document?
I could, yes. And then,
That way people have an opportunity to start seeing these numbers.
yep, and then the next conversation to give me some direction we will need to have is, you've given me the direction to develop 2 budgets, one that would be with an override and one wouldn't. I will need some general direction on what that budget would contain with an override. Is that, in the selectmen's mind, a level service budget? And if so, what that may contain. Because like I say, at this point in time, Vicky's done her best in her mind to capture that in the column. Probably about 85 to 90% of the items in there, Vicky and I agree on, maybe 10 to 15%. We might disagree. I'm sure members of the Board of Selectmen might have a little different, idea of what that might contain too. And I did put some highlights at the bottom of page 5. Currently, the conservation agent, which is currently being paid through a grant, those wages, and actually the Conservation Commission did request some expense money for fiscal year 19. Those are not currently in the level service column or included in the level service column. They are in the request column. The highway superintendent had requested an increase of $12,000 to the snow and ice accounts of wages and expenses. That's included in the request, but not included in the level service. I've been told in the past that probably traditionally the Board of Selectmen would have maybe increased those line items maybe $1 or $10 for the upcoming fiscal year, but that was about all that would happen for it, just so we stayed within state statute. Currently, there is 2% COLA wage increase for non-union personnel included in the level service column. The department heads included that have unions and with CBA agreements did include 2% wage increase. Currently, that is still in the level service department. Whether we want to talk about whether that's the right amount or a lesser amount, that's up for discussion in my mind. Currently, as it sits there, there is $0 in the reserve fund in fiscal year 2019, either in the request or the level service column of this budget. This current year, that was at $5,000. I've been told in the past that it may have been or was as much as $40,000.
It was 50,000 at one time when I
Yeah.
was on finance.
And probably one of my concerns is the fact that if we are going into a very tight year, and especially if an override does not pass, you very well may need a reserve account, because otherwise, if you have something come up of an emergency basis or end up for something unforeseen and overspend your account, you're basically going to depend on 2 things happen. One is a special town meeting to either appropriate free cash or transfer funds, or you have to wait till May or June when you can transfer funds. So that's one of my concerns there. The reverse 9/11 system in the past, a good portion of it has been funded through our EMD grant for fiscal year 19, because there's a timing issue on how their grant falls in a timeline versus our fiscal year. I think there's only like 5 or 6 months that are eligible. So for fiscal year 19, we have moved that $3,900 into the regular budget appropriation, rather than not having it there and figuring that the grant would pay for most of it.
Have
There's
you-
no assumption that grant's going to get funded in the coming year either.
No assumption, do you say?
We apply for it, we've been getting it, but given that it's a grant, you never can depend on that actually coming in.
Ed, have you heard from all the department heads regarding budget request for the next year?
They have all come in at, they basically all come at this point in time. Really, the only pieces that truly aren't reflected are what the actual numbers of what Norris is going to be, but I think there's a good ballpark in there for what they might be, so it's not just hanging out there. The only other piece that I know of is I asked Maya for their quote or estimate of what our property and casualty or workman's comp may be for next year. Right now, they're in there pretty much level funded. At this point, they don't have an exact figure for us. They said you can budget 5% increase on both of them, but you may not need it. So that's a little bit up in the air.
So the request budget includes some of the requests for Council of Aging, Building Inspector, some of the increases that have been requested? Is that
Those pieces, what Vicki did pull out of it was, and if you look at the document, there's not going to be any secret about it. The fire chief had put it in for administrative assistant. That's been pulled out of there. The highway superintendent had put in for more hours for his administrative assistant. That's been, those extra hours are pulled out of there. Items like that that we could identify straightforward through the requests have pretty much been pulled out. And like I say, you know, some of that, some of you might say, okay, you know, that's a decent request. We think that should be back in there, or you might look at some of the other ones and say, yeah, we should think that should be out of there too.
Now, anything approved at the town meeting is in here, right?
Yes,
Okay.
to the best of my knowledge. I haven't seen anything that's glaringly omitted.
Okay. So we've got to prepare two budgets.
Yes.
I mean, at least in my mind, I'm just going to throw it out is a level funding budget and a level service budget, which obviously are hundreds of thousands of dollars apart. But I don't know, and get some input from the folks, I don't know if we can go above a level service at this point, unless there's special cases that we pick out.
And why I might not have a definitive answer on that, I have my opinion on that.
Yep.
Is if we want to sell this to the voters and residents of Southampton,
Yep.
and that we are fiscally prudent with their tax dollars, that, yeah, I think we have to look at this is what is level service giving the people the same services that they may expect at this particular time without adding a lot to that or adding anything to that, so that we can say, okay, if you're happy with your services now, here is a budget that would include all of that. It's going to be, whether it's, depending on which number you look at and go to, could be anywhere from $646,000 to $794,000. It's going to include all this. And then I'm going to develop a second budget that says, okay, if that does not pass, and this is the harder piece, and there's not that, and I'll just use the $646,000 level, here are the services that we are not going to be able to provide you next year. And I will, one of the things that I want to throw out there so you're aware of it, municipalities are very much a service-oriented industry. Anywhere between probably 80 and 90% of our budget goes to salaries in one way or the other. When we're talking about this large of a deficit, inevitably you may have to look at not filling positions, laying people off, what have you. One of the cautions, we are a self-funded unemployment community. We're large enough. It doesn't come off the deductions from the payroll, so we budget for unemployment. Anytime you're in that situation, you start to look at, okay, what can we save if we don't fill this position, that position, or whatever. When you lay people off, if you lay, say, if that equated to saying, okay, we're going to have to lay 5 people off or not fill 5 positions, when you lay people off, you're going to have to really, if your target was the dollar amount for the 5, you're really going to have to lay off 8 because you still end up paying about 60 to 60% in the unemployment costs with them not being on the budget. So you don't really save what you think you are.
So you've got to overcut in order to get the savings you want.
It's really a double, shall we say, penalty, yes.
And just for my clarification, because you said 646 to 750, if I'm looking at the budgets here on the education, just between Norris and Hampshire is almost $650,000 increase. So when I originally computed it, I was getting closer to $1 million if you had everything in. So, I mean, it's a big number either way.
It's a large number either way, absolutely.
In that budget, you don't want to say $1 million and not show
Oh.
where that money's
You
going.
got to show every single line. Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why the level funded would show how much has to be taken away from every department.
And there isn't there a little kind of monkey wrench in there that you have to meet net school spending too? So
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
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 regardless
Yeah.
if you were to say I want a net fund Norris, you can't because you have to meet the net school.
Exactly.
Well, I think it's 135,000 this year. We'd have to fund Norris in addition in last year to meet net school spending, but as you know, in the past, you can go to minus 5% and still meet the law, which we don't want to slide back to, but yeah, but there is that little 5% in there.
I'll make one case as a voter, and I think that,
Erin, do you mind?
oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
up there.
I forgot this one talking.
Yeah,
I know, you get in trouble, I know. Aaron Kuchar, 49 Coleman Road. I'm sure people have seen that there's this task force of people that I seem to be running for the Proposition 2.5 override and trying to get the word out there so that we can really get behind it and really get the voters to hopefully support it. But I would make the case when you're thinking about putting a budget out there that if you say level service, it means level service to everybody, and that it's not picked that somebody who wants a little extra hours here. I mean, it has to be complete level services because it's not going to pass if it's not, because it's not fair if, I'm just going to put that out there. I also think one thing we need to know is what exactly does it mean if it doesn't happen. And like we've talked about, like 10 people here, 5 people there, like we need to know exactly what that means sooner than later, because May 1st is going to be here before we know it. And March 21st at Norris at 6 o'clock is the first meeting of people that want to get together to try to figure out how we get this passed. So
I think it's going to mean different things to different departments. Like the Norris School, it's a lot bigger hit than, I don't know, the fire department or the police department.
Well, I think it's going to be interesting on how it's going to be decided how that hit occurs, because you're going to have to really, there's going to be a lot of things that have to be considered about saying to what each department, what are they losing and what are they not losing. So if you're to say, okay, well, we have to fund net school spending, there's a number associated with that you have to fund. But we also have to think about what does that mean to the other departments, and that it has to be fair, I think, across everybody, that everybody is treated similar. We're all departments of the town, so
Yeah, no,
that's
you're
what
right.
I would say.
Is the board ready to give some direction to the town administrator?
Well, I'd like to personally, because there's a lot of people here, I'd sure like to hear some other opinions from people in general, because this is the biggest thing going on this year, and we know where the schools are, but it'd be nice if people just give their opinions on if there was an override for $750,000, $1 million. Do you know off the top of your head, Ed, what that means on the tax rate, so we can get kind of put?
No, I haven't gotten that
Okay.
far yet, so yeah.
Yeah, so what people are willing to support, you know? And I know it's tough, you're on camera, you're on TV, so it's tough to get up there, and we have a lot what I call closet voters who say something out in public, but when they go in there, they check something else off, so. Is there anybody? Okay.
How did you know that I'd be, no. Tammy Walunas, 298 College Highway. The question I have is, yes, we're talking about 2.5% override right now, but don't we have a couple of big ticket items that we're paying for that are going to be coming off?
in debts,
In debts, yes.
long-term debt, yeah.
And,
That'll take and reduce the tax load, and then some of it is coming down. We don't have the numbers sitting in front of us,
right,
but we do know that there's going to be a decrease coming relative to that debt load.
so we could be looking at a larger amount for a couple of years, 3 years, and then when that deficit, the debt goes down, it'll go back to normal?
It may be right now going to happen. If I remember
In
right.
18, there's something's coming off.
Yeah.
There's a
Is it
roof.
Norris?
Regional
Is-
debt
is-
exclusion is, I think.
Is that 18 or 19? Okay,
And then
yeah.
there's-
The
in
school,
Norris-
I think
it
it's
Norris?
the school roof,
The roof.
Yeah,
in
The
Norris.
roof.
I think.
135,000.
What about the library? Is that dropped off yet?
I think
When's the Hampshire Regional, Ed?
2020, if I remember right.
That's in 20, yeah.
And how much is that?
That was 300 and something thousand a year,
Yeah.
yeah. But
So is that something that we can look at to
That is
try
something
to?
that when we start talking to the general public about what we've decided on budget, we can balance out what's being retired in debt in relationship to what a 2.5 debt override would cause the taxes to go up.
Right.
It looks like we're looking at very close to the same monies here,
Okay.
but that's just without actually doing the math.
Well, that's a debt exclusion.
Yeah.
That money goes away. The town doesn't get to collect that money.
But
It
we can
goes
lower
back
the-
to the
Right.
taxpayer.
Right, but the taxpayer will
See a tax
See a
reduction.
tax reduction.
reduction and then,
An increase if this passes again.
right.
Yes.
So let me just throw the old monkey wrench into that. We were talking about, instead of lowering the tax rate down, going back to the voters, trying to get another debt exclusion to do the safety complex, because we needed money for that. So that's where we were talking on that. So we could go either way, but there
Yeah.
are, needs out there,
Yes.
both sides.
On both sides. Okay,
But it's a good thought.
okay.
Hello,
Hi.
my name is Matt Rowland. I live at 16 Mountain Road. Lived there with my family since 2011. This is my first town meeting, so I might say some things being naive. I guess just listening to this, one of the concerns I just want to voice is that if the board had asked for two different budgets, level service and then level spend, the individual municipalities or the individual boards should have honored that. And I guess it's a little disconcerting that some of them didn't, like that some of them didn't show level service and then one level spend. Like that should have been done, because I think your jobs become more difficult when those two are not presented that way, when it seems like, some of the boards decided to just show you level service with massive spending increases, where others took your word and took your direction and provided both and were honest about it. And so I'm a little bit concerned that those lines have gotten blurred for you and have made, I'm worried about you being able to make this decision or figuring this out when some of the information that you're getting is not exactly perfect. So that's my first concern. And then, for me personally, I'd like to see level service in this town. I think it's important, but at the same time, running a fairly large business myself and working for a large company, I understand like what it takes to do that, and fiscal responsibility is important as well. And so I think that, there are ways to provide a level service while also like being fiscally responsible. I think that there's certain things that are with this government that could possibly be combined that would still provide the level service without needing to spend more and almost like a tightening of the belt in some areas, still providing the service but not having to pay as much for it. But for me, overall, I would say that I'm definitely in support of an override.
Okay, before you go away.
Sure.
Thanks for coming to your first meeting. It's good to see new faces.
Yeah.
And you said there's some ideas about combining and all this. Will you want to throw any out that we might
I think what I'll do is I'll think more about them, and I'd be happy to.
send an
Yeah. I mean, I
email
could-
maybe to Ed,
Sure.
town administrator?
Yeah.
And I
I'm happy
think
to do
in
that.
the idea of the different departments not putting in what we're asked for, that's been on for a long time. But with a full-time town administrator, that's where he runs interference for us.
Sure.
Because before it would go to the finance committee, they'd have to fight over it and come to the board, so.
Well, I guess, one simple one, and I don't, obviously standing up in front of the group is kind of, it's just, it came from this meeting, right? It seems like multiple committees and boards have asked for administrative help, right?
Yeah.
It seems to me that, like, hiring one administrator for the right amount of pay could serve three purposes, right? For police, fire, and maybe highway department, right? If I'm not mistaken, those are kind of three big departments. So I'm kind of thinking that maybe, there's economies to scale there potentially. It's just a thought, and it's probably not a significant amount of money, but it's just one thing that you could show voters, like, hey, this is what we're trying to do. We're going to try to pass an override here, but these are some of the concessions that we're trying to make to provide level service.
Yeah, there is administrative assistants that are shared between departments, and I think this is getting to a point where they want more time, so it's starting to go into two positions. And we're cautious that 20 hours or over, you got to pay benefits too, and that just spikes the cost. So sometimes positions are split on purpose so you don't have benefits. Yeah. That saves 30.
I mean, personal concerns are that, if we don't provide level service, like what does that do to the town long term? Does property values go down? Do people not want to move here? Do the schools suffer? School choice revenues go down. People are moving here because my family moved here because of the schools, and we'd like to stay here, and we're building out our house, and we're doing a bunch of things to try to make improvements here, and we're the expectation long term is that we do keep level services, but we're also fiscally responsible about it, and we're not the town doesn't think that we're taking advantage of everybody.
Right.
So
all good points.
I think the local school committee, there are huge implications because if you remove certain teachers, you then have differences in the ability to take in school choice folks. And I mean, it's a spiral that can head downward very quickly.
Yeah, so, I mean, you increase class size from the high teens now to mid-20s. Like, I just from a parent standpoint, I can promise you that people, there will be less families moving into this town, more families moving out, and so school choice revenues go down. It's the spiraling cascade, which you kind of described with unemployment. You got to lay off 8 people just to save what would normally be 5. So things can quickly spiral out of control.
I think it's important to say, too, that schools aren't the same as they used to be. When people look at class numbers, we're talking about inclusion classes. We're talking about people that, a significant number of people that have either special needs or 504 plans, technology, safety. I mean, it's a totally different place than it used to be, and I think people need to realize that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Janet Kane, 83 Glendale Road, the chair for the Council on Aging. I guess my request on the override would to make sure that we focus on the seniors in town. The population is approximately 28% of the town's entire population. It's increased by 50% since 2010. When the raises were handed out last year for department heads, it was neglected. We don't, as a town, even fund a full-time director. We depend on hopefully getting grant money that should be used for other things to pay for a director for our Council on Aging in town. So I think it's really critical. We're not the size of the school. We'll partner with the school for sure, but 28% of the population needs to be paid attention to. So I'm just requesting that the override include a full-time director that's paid 26 hours a week, not at $20 an hour, but as the Jacobs study recommends, 24 at least dollars an hour. It's kind of an embarrassment that this department has been neglected. So, just my wish.
That 28%.
My ask.
What age does that start?
That's 60 and up.
60 and up.
You just made it.
Yeah, I'm still waiting to get there, but hardly. So anyway, any other questions over it? I mean, it really is. I mean, we're struggling to. We have a very qualified person. The position has been scored for a town this size using Don Jacobs' study. It should be on equivalency of the town accountant, the treasurer, the building inspector, the building commissioner, and yet it's sorely underpaid, and the hours we're struggling to even get a full-time, all 26 hours covered. So, just want the public to know.
Did you submit that in your budget for 19?
Yes, I absolutely did.
Okay. And I'd just like to say one thing, as long as Janet mentioned it, she quoted the Jacobs study. I'm pretty positive that that has not been adopted by the, officially by the town, so.
Rebuttal.
Same name, same address. It hasn't officially been adopted by the town, but a number of those department heads have been given raises last year based on that study and the scoring for that study and the recommendations of that study. Even though it's not officially, it certainly has actively been implemented.
And has that been reviewed by PQB?
Yes, the position was scored, and that's what we based our budget on, and it's scored based on, the job description that was created, and it falls into that, at a mid-range pay rate would be $24 an hour. That would be, and we have someone in there with close to 30 years' experience, but we rate the job, not the person that's in there. So yes, it has been rescored.
Thanks.
Anyone else like to address the board? Then I entertain, does the board wish to make a motion directing the town administrator on how to move forward with this budget?
Do we need to? I mean, it's still a draft
It's still a draft.
version, right?
But
Well,
he's
I
got to
think
give a
he-
comparison.
I think he needs to take and basically look at a level service and a level spending budget
Okay.
for us.
Yeah,
Then he needs to have that direction from this board.
Okay.
yeah. I mean, I'll make the motion. He prepare a level service and a level funded budget for all departments in town.
There's a second?
I'll second that.
So,
Discussion?
Yes.
Yeah.
Ed, how do you feel about that?
Right. I'll say something after you're done, but go ahead.
Well, do you want basically to develop a level service budget, which would be the override number? And then the flip side of that, without saying whether it's level funded or not level funded, the
What?
balance is going to be basically a balanced budget
But-
as an
A
alternative.
balanced budget's the other way.
But I think it's important to, and Aaron's going to probably say something like this, but we need to,
Aaron's opportunity is lost. This is the
no,
discussion.
she always has opportunity. Level funded, let people know what level funded means, because some people think level funded is level service, and that's not true because of all the additional costs that go in. So we have to make a distinction there. And because level funded means you're going to lose X dollars from the budget, and police, fire, school and all that are going to have to deal with that in that budget, which is cutting back. And the health insurance is going to kick the big departments right in the pants. But a third budget,
Right.
let's say we got the two budgets, but there may be a sidebar on some items that you think, Ed, that would be interested in saying, we really need to figure out a way to get this in there, even though it doesn't fit within those two budgets. Because there are some things I think we need to bring up and look at and discuss. That's my opinion.
And I would like the voters to make those kind of decisions and chime in as well. So, for example, what Janet just mentioned, that wouldn't be in a level service or level funded budget, right?
Right.
But I would certainly want voters to be able to decide whether that would be something that they would want to do, and the same for some of the other things. I mean, we can certainly look at the budget and say yes, no to administrative assistant, but if there are certain things that are not level service that we think are important to the people in Southampton, or at least we want them to chime in on it, I think it's important to have a third column.
Yep. How we reconcile
Yeah.
individual items like that back into a budget would be real difficult. So I don't know that we want to bring it to town meeting, but
I'd
maybe.
like the finance
yeah.
committee also to chime in on
Right.
that.
Yeah, I think we should have open forums on this before the town meeting to discuss, here's what's going to happen, here's what's going to happen, here's some extras, what are your thoughts? Because we need to really get it out.
Yeah. So you're saying go to the town meeting with 3 options and let them
No,
pick
no,
the 2? Is
no,
that what you're saying?
no.
That's
So
not
what
what
you're
I'm
saying,
saying.
just for discussion, have 3 that we can toss around and then end up with 2?
But not at the town meeting.
Not town meeting, prior to town meeting.
Prior to town meeting, have the finance committee chime in on the additional request, and also have the voters chime in some kind of public forum on the additional request. From there, come up with 2 items.
Okay.
One is level funded, and then one is override budget,
Yeah, taking into consideration what
everything.
townsfolk think about those extra items. and then we go to town meeting with it.
How are we gonna do that, on a website?
Well, the first thing you need to do is have a motion and a second, and my understanding is the way the motion is, it's level services, which is basically an override. Level spending is a balanced budget. Those are the two directions, and then you want a third column as a caveat of what you feel are priorities that need to be addressed.
Well, additional requested services that the Finance Committee and the public can chime in on.
And then maybe add those to the override, is what you're saying?
Well, the
If
public-
it's decided
If it's
by the
decided.
public and the Finance Committee and us that that's worthy of putting in front of the voters.
But if process is the way I understand process, Ed puts these two budgets together with the list of priorities that we feel need to be addressed. That becomes your open public forum of discussion.
Right.
We can't do that now, but we need to give him direction to get the ball in play here.
I think that's the exact direction we gave.
Yeah.
We have, the level service, level funded, and then the options,
Yeah.
which we want public input on.
Yep.
So does the clerk have that motion? What do you think? I know, that's why I'm asking, because.
The amended motion would be,
Okay, so,
Right, just clarify your motion. You want,
can I just repeat it back to you? To prepare a level service and a level spending balance budget for each department with additional options?
As a third column, if you will.
As a third column.
Right.
Okay, is that it? Good?
and then if you amend your motion, I'll amend, you're adding the third column to it now?
Well, so my motion is amended.
And then I'll amend the second as well.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, unanimous, so we have some direction.
Can I ask a question about your direction? How does level, because this is, I'm thinking out loud, you say level funded and level spending, which are two different things, because level funded would be you take exactly what they got this year and they get that next year. Level spending would be different because there's been different changes that have happened in January to create higher spending. So, and then in addition to that, you know things that you can't adjust, which is some fixed costs that you don't have a choice on. So is it levels, when you say, you're saying a balanced budget to them, but those were two different ideas.
Level funded, which is a balanced budget from this current fiscal 18, and level service.
I get the level service. I just think the level funded, I think,
Well, whatever
You
you
say
have.
balanced budget.
Balanced
balanced
budget, yeah.
budget.
That's what I.
Because, but balanced budget is gonna require Ed to make cuts or changes from money because you don't have the same amount of money next year.
Now, what it's going to basically say is whatever we had in 18, this is what you're getting in 17. It's not going to make a determination on how you're getting to that based where what you want. This is just to prepare a draft.
He has to find he has to cut $646,000 from the budget.
Or he doesn't increase the budget by $648,000 based on what it was for fiscal 18. That's all. Just take fiscal 18 budget as approved. That's
That's
the,
not gonna, okay, but that's
That'll
that's
get-
gonna be cuts in service is what I'm telling you, because you have things that occur.
right. And that's why we're saying level service is the next level up, which includes the
And
extra.
so you say that's level budget, so if you give Norris the level that you gave him, you're gonna be $125,000 less than your net school spending number, which
Correct.
is, we're gonna get penalized at.
Well, but again, that's just to see
But
side by side.
I'm just putting that out there as like understanding that
Yep,
this is
understand.
gonna mean that there's
Yeah.
other
I'm not
things,
saying
voodoo you're
level-
gonna have to do to make it work or something.
Well,
Yeah, we're not
I
saying a
mean-
balanced budget is workable for, say, for Norris, but what is it? What does it look like?
and probably my more concern as the motion was read back was the fact that it was read back as level funded by department. And I will say straight out is that you would not be able to do that because just in the schools, you're going to have more
Right.
than what we have in new money, which would require, if you said, okay, that's what the schools are getting, it would be required to actually cut the other departments. So
Yeah.
as the motion was read to me, I have more concerns about the direction of that fixed business.
So,
I know it wasn't. I thank you. I
so
thank you for your
does it
support.
work to just remove by department?
Yeah, just remove that.
So we'll,
So you want to take that out?
yeah. I mean, for the school, what I was thinking of, when you do it that way, the right-hand column would have that $134,000 that we need to put back in at some point. So where are we going to get it from? Because you're right, you got to do net school spending unless you want to go less than that, which I don't think we want to go back to.
Margaret Larson, 9 David. I think while I was standing back there, you kind of came around to this, but I'll echo kind of what you came to, and that's that over the last several months at Hampshire Regional, the principal, Kristen Smitty, started with 4 tiers of budgets, and then that gradually was able to move down until we had a level service budget plus some things that she felt would offset expenses or perhaps reduce expenses and increase school choice. And so we were able to make decisions based on that. But it took several meetings, and we went through that exact same process. We had kind of a wish list that we thought was important for the health and well-being of the school and for our students, and then we gradually pulled back what we could. So just thought.
Can I ask you a question while you're up there,
Sure.
since you're on the school committee, and kind of put you on the spot?
Sure.
What happens if 2 or 3 towns reject this budget, and you have to go back and go to the spending that you had for the current fiscal year? What would that do to Hampshire Regional in general? And I know
Right,
Tammy
so we have actually asked the principal to come back with a list of what the cuts would be.
Okay.
Which teachers would have to go, which departments would be cut, which, counselors would be cut, how we would deal with that. So she is working on that, and we'll have that for us.
So that's something we could have, because it'll be important as we go out to
Yes.
the town.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. Go ahead, Tim. You're up.
Tammy Relunas, 298 College Highway. The other thing to remember is we could say no, and the other 4 towns could say yes, and we have to pay Hampshire Regional budget.
That's why I say 2
So-
or more towns say no.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's,
But that's good to remind everybody of that.
so it could be a budget that has the full Hampshire, and it could have a budget that doesn't, and
And that's happened many times.
Many times.
yeah. Yeah, and normally we are last. We're the last town to vote. But we are the first one this year, May 1st. We moved our date,
That's right, so we
so
flipped
we
everything.
will be the first town to be voting on that budget.
Okay. All right.
I want to, Matt Rowland, 16 Mountain Road. I think that where the line's getting blurred for me, and I think where it's going to get blurred for town people, especially when they're voting, is this concept of a balanced budget. Because people generally want a balanced budget, right? That's the goal. The problem with a balanced budget in this town this year is that you lose a tremendous amount of services. Like, you're talking major cuts to every department, schools losing 4 or 5 teachers. I mean, it potentially could be catastrophic to every department. So like the term balanced budget, while it's a nice feel-good term, in this voting cycle, it's not necessarily the best term, right? I mean, I don't think any of us are looking forward to maybe passing something that looks like that. And so I think where I'm going with this is this year it's pivotally important to figure these numbers out as soon as possible, and to have an itemized list of exactly what services are lost under the coined term balanced budget, right? I mean, because a balanced budget makes people think like, all right, everything's going to stay the same from last year, and it's not. It's not going to be anything like last year if we pass a balanced budget. So the townspeople need to be well informed, and people like our committee need to be way out ahead of this to try to educate the town about what does a balanced budget look like for you next year, because it's certainly not the same as what it is this year, right?
So maybe level funded is a different term, but it still
Well,
gives
level
the-
funded is kind of similar, right? I mean, level funded still results in a ton of services lost, because level fund.
No, I'm just saying term,
level
because you're
service.
right. Level
I mean, level
funded-
service is what we have this year, next year, which is the $696,000 override. Level funded, which is the balanced budget, correct? Am I using the correct terms?
yeah.
Is with significant losses.
Yeah.
And so that level funded balanced budget needs to be well articulated to the voting population of the services that are lost, so that nobody comes in here voting for a balanced budget thinking that everything's going to be the same as last year, when it's going to be totally different on every department, on every service. Am I wrong in saying anything that I'm saying, or
Nope.
are my
We have
assumptions
to
correct?
put together.
I hate to doomsday it, but it's not, balanced budget does not mean
No,
the
it's
same.
a really good point.
Yeah.
Right, the
So we need
balanced
to-
budget has to have a fixed with it, what's gonna leave, what we're gonna be
Yes.
losing. It's not balanced service, or whatever you
Yeah,
want.
because I'm worried about
It's
that.
gonna be a
because,
big negative.
Listening to this, and I think in most towns, everybody thinks that balance just means we're just doing the same thing as last year. And it's not. It's bad.
Yeah.
Balanced
So,
negative service,
We
balanced
need to
budget,
list
negative
that out,
service.
post it everywhere. People need to know what they're voting on.
and not have it be this like last minute 11th hour, 10th hour thing where everybody comes in voting for a balanced budget and then they're left holding the bag next year being like, what happened here? I thought I voted for everything to be the same as last year, and it's not.
Our fear is that when we have these, like in the past, people don't show up.
Yeah.
You know? And if they don't show up and just get to the ballots, no, I'm not spending $1 million, you know?
So that's exactly my point. So that's what, having this information as far in advance as possible allows people that are in this room who presumably care enough to mobilize to hopefully get the word out, just in an effort to educate, not sway or bias or manipulate, but like people just need to know. And you know, I'll be the first one to admit that I had my head in the sand for a few years since I've moved here. And as I've paid more and more attention, I care more and more. And I'm glad that I'm educating myself, and I feel obligated to try to do my best in a way that's not swaying necessarily to educate others as well. Like even if it's just my neighbors that I live close to, like, hey, did you know, these things come up while you're picking up the mail or whatever it might be. I mean, simple things, right? So.
They're recorded and they're live feed, so people have to go.
The other thing that makes it difficult, I think it's 2/3 vote for this, right? Isn't it 2/3 for an override?
2.5 override.
So that makes it very difficult. Town meeting, an override for a budget, for an,
Town meeting's 2/3 majority at the ballot box.
right, that's what makes it hard.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Matt.
Hi, Cindy Palmer, 71 Glendale Road. I'm going to just reiterate something that this gentleman just said, and also in terms of what Janet said. You know, I think we tried to do an extra funding for the schools at last year, and it failed, and it's failed many, many times from what I understand. I'm talking about the Norris School asking for some extra money. Forgot what it was called. So Janet made the point that there's a significant percentage of people in this town, and I'm in that group, over the age of 60. And sometimes I think that there are people that fail to vote for things that are for the school because they say, wait, our kids were already educated. Well, I'm a grandmother, my kids are in the schools, and I'm really pleased with the schools. But I think in terms of the detail that this gentleman just spoke about, we need to show the impact to every person in town. The 28%, the people with kids in schools, we have to really spell out how those change services, if it was a balanced budget, would impact every single person in town. That's going to help to support the override. That's what I have to say right now.
Thanks. Ed, we passed a bylaw this year that's focused on the budget process. Can we review that at the next meeting and set some dates with the Finance Committee so that we're ahead of this and have plenty of time to share that with the public?
Sure.
I'll follow up, so we have plenty of time, and I don't think we have plenty of time left even now, so I think we need to really push this. So time frame wise, getting the comparison budgets back to us, Ed, I don't want to put you on the spot, but how long do you think it would take to do that? I mean, if we have to convene a meeting in between this one and the next one, I'm fine with that.
Okay. It's probably going to take 10 days to 2 weeks, so, but yeah, we might want to do
So by the
a
next
special
meeting?
meeting in between.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when you're ready, let us know.
Sure.
Okay.
So you think you'll be ready by the 20th? That's our next meeting.
I think so.
All right, so you don't see not an urgency, but you don't think you'll have the material ready next week?
I would doubt it, but you never know.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
I
you'll let
do.
us know.
We'll
Otherwise,
reach
it'll be
out
the
and see.
20th, right?
So, well, let's schedule a meeting for next week. If we don't have it, we cancel it, because we need, 2 days' notice to put a meeting. So if you're feeling like you're ahead of the game, we have the meeting. If not, we'll cancel it. Does that sound reasonable, or do you think that's way off base? Be honest. What?
Well, I will not be here on Tuesday, I'll tell you that right now, because I'm losing a day for a medical reason, but.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm out of town next Wednesday through Friday anyway. But if other people can meet, that's fine.
let's just see.
Do Thursday
Next
the
week's spring
15th?
break.
That's no.
Thursday the 15th?
I'm good on Thursday the 15th.
Sure.
I'm out of town next week, Wednesday through Friday.
Well,
Well, she said she didn't need to be here for that, but you anywhere you can see the stuff, or you're on
No.
vacation? Okay.
No, I'm actually not on vacation, but I'm taking care of a family member.
Oh, okay,
I
so,
will be gone.
yeah, you'll be gone, okay. I'm fine if you want to do that. Do you mind?
Nope, the sooner the better.
Okay.
If you can send it to me, though, by email, I'll get a chance to chime in, or at least review it. That'd be
Yeah.
helpful.
I can't do it till 6 o'clock that night, though. Well, actually, I can do it at 5 o'clock. I'll swap something at work to get here early.
That's fine.
Yeah, I can do 5. It may be a long night. So I'm okay, let's do 5. I'll swap my nights. Anything for you, Charlie?
I'm wide open, whatever works for you guys.
Yeah, you're retired, I know.
Yeah, I'm retired, I don't do anything.
Let's do it.
All right.
Let's set it. March 15th?
Yeah, 5 o'clock.
Right. It's a Thursday. Okay, well, I guess the discussion for the Prop 2.5 override and special elections pretty much hinging on the budget.
Yeah.
So we'll pick that up at our next meeting.
We all know we need one, but we
Yeah.
don't know the amount, so.
All right, next thing on the agenda is Select Board Annual Town Report Draft. That was sent out for everyone to look at. I guess the only paragraph that has concerns that I'm aware of is the last paragraph. Am I correct?
The one that says concerns.
What's that?
Yes, the only ones I have concerns, I had anyone with concerns is the one that says concerns.
Yeah.
That's the last paragraph. Speaking for myself, I'm comfortable with it, but I'd like to have the whole board comfortable with it. Does anyone want to rework this language on the last paragraph?
Yeah, I actually already have.
What is it that you don't care for?
Well, I'll be honest with you, it seems like it's airing a little bit of discontent with the Finance Committee and the town moderator from last year's budget process, and I don't see a need to do that. So what I amended was basically saying Southampton has limited finances due to Proposition 2.5 and lack of business and commercial tax sources. As our population increases, real estate taxes do not sustain our financial obligation. Remove the section that goes through what happened last year back and forth, and just pick it back up with, we had many challenges with the budget sequence in 2017. It was difficult to meet the financial request of all personnel and departments as we would have liked to. We also had difficulties in the budget process and relationship with the Finance Committee and the arrival at a final agreed-upon budget for the annual town meeting. At the special town meeting in January, a new budget sequence bylaw was passed that will hopefully improve the budget process for the future. We're very fortunate to have dedicated individuals who work for us all in all departments in our schools. We also truly appreciate all who volunteer for our town. We encourage all residents to stay informed, attend town meetings, and exercise your right to vote. So I just thought it would made more sense to just to remove some of the things that I thought was contentious, frankly.
I'm fine with the modifications. I don't know how you gentlemen feel.
I'm fine with it, yeah.
I'm fine either way.
Do I hear a motion to accept this as redrafted?
Well, why don't we have Maureen?
Maureen.
I was somewhere else. Really. You want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we accept the full town report. Thank you, Jim, for drafting this and including the other edits. That we accept the amended version of the annual town report by the Select Board.
I'll second it.
Discussion?
No, just thank you, Jim, for doing the work. Appreciate it.
And my only other question is somebody given an electronic copy of this to?
It was sent to me. It was sent to me as a PDF. So I sent it back.
Well, Ed has the electronic copy. He can make the mods. Can you do that?
Yeah, I actually think Velda has it,
Velda
but yeah,
has
we
it.
should be able to do that.
I remember sending it to Velda in Word. But Jim sent it to PDF, I converted it and sent it to her.
And then we modded it and then sent it back in
All right,
Word.
but
So
she's
he has
got
it.
All right.
She has
So
it.
anyways, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved unanimously. Next thing on the agenda, nomination of a person to dedicate the annual report to. Every year.
Go ahead. I was going to make a nomination. You said that was the agenda item. Go ahead, give your little
Yeah,
spiel.
just give me a minute. I got to warm up to this, every year the town Board of Selectmen and the town recognizes an individual for the work and dedication they have done to the town. If you look at the annual town report, you'll see in the front cover, there's always somebody that's mentioned and respected for their dedication to the community. So this evening, the Board of Selectmen are charged with basically nominating another person. Now, if you would like.
I'd like to make a nomination that we dedicate the annual town report to Dick Frary.
Second.
Discussion?
No, I think it's a great dedication.
Yeah, it's excellent.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Very good. Now, this is going to cause poor Dick to be confronted by somebody interviewing him, somebody taking pictures, and all the rest of the things that go forward with this.
That he loves, huh?
That he loves. Yes.
Yeah, I think it's a good honor for him, though.
We have from the town clerk, open meeting law materials for updating for the town clerk. Please review those. You need to sign off on one form and get it back to her. This is for all departments and committees and groups and so on, so I'm assuming everyone's gotten that. I want to take a minute only because we're talking about the town clerk. Nomination papers are at the town clerk's office for many boards and committees in this town. If you would like to participate and become more actively involved in your community, please take these papers out, get yourself nominated so that you can get on the ballot. It's a whole different world when you're sitting on this side of the table.
And the pay's great, too.
You know, the pay is phenomenal. The fringe benefits are unbelievable. That said, we are now moving into open land opinion update from KP Law. We were...
Chapter land.
Yeah, go ahead. Why not? We have been going with open discussions relative to basically chapter land, which everyone knows is Chapter 61, and a series of questions were submitted to KP Law for clarification. We finally, I shouldn't say finally, but we got a response back. Again, it's multiple pages. I'm going to ask Ed if he'd post this on the town website so people can read it instead of us trying to make numerous copies. It seems to be the same track we've been hearing from day one about this, unless this committee wants to bring up something specific.
I do once I find it. What I want to bring up is that we had asked some specific questions, and for some of these folks that are still out there, so I think we should at least address those specific questions. Okay, so you mind if I read them?
No, I don't
Okay.
mind. This is wide open.
Okay, it's a 4-page document signed by Attorney Klein from KP Law. And on the 4th page, it says you have asked specific questions relative to timing. So A is, if classification under Chapter 61 as forest lands expires on December 31st, 2018, and is not renewed, and a sale occurs after December 31st, 2018, does the town have a right of first refusal? Her answer is, in my opinion, assuming the classification expires on December 31st, 2018, town's right of refusal does not expire until December 31st, 2019. So that's a question that was asked by some folks out here. And B, the second question is, if land classified under Chapter 61, 61A, and 61B is purchased and the new owner converts the property within 1 year from the date the land was last classified as chapter land, does the town continue to have the right of first refusal? The opinion is the town would, in her opinion, have a right of first refusal from 1 year from the date the land was so classified. Third question, if property is taken out of Chapter 61 and subsequent thereto, there is an agreement for sale and conveyance, and a conversion occurs upon closing or within a year from when the land was taken out of chapter land status, what rights does the town have? And her response was the town would, in her opinion, have a right of first refusal for 1 year from the date the land was so classified. And the last question was, if land classified as Chapter 61 forest land is used instead for a Chapter 61A, which is horticulture, agriculture use, does the land have to remain classified as Chapter 61A for a minimum of 5 years, or is 1 year sufficient? Her response was, in their opinion, if the land remains in Chapter 61A or 61B for a minimum of 1 year, the town's right of first refusal would be extinguished. There has not been a conversion to a residential, industrial, or commercial use. So those are questions that were brought up by several people in here. Does anybody have any thoughts, questions, or follow-ups? And the rest of it is 4 pages, it's going to be posted.
April West, 54 Strong Road. Hi. Thanks for all the work you guys do for our town. Thank you for reading the letter. We would love to have a copy of that before we leave tonight so that we can read it all the way through. That'd be great. Thank you.
Yep. Yes. Yeah.
That clarified a few things. I just wanted the Board of Selectmen to know that on March 1st, last week, the College Highway Wayne parcel transfer title for $1.2 million from the Waynes to Eugene Labrie. And there were 3 municipal lien certificates filed with that, of which only one had $18.40 due. And on these municipal lien certificates signed by Donna Whiteley, I have no knowledge of any other liens outstanding. And I just want to make you guys aware of that, because there is a chapter lien on that land still, and the town still has the right of first refusal on that.
I believe also an affidavit was filed by Mr. Labrie saying he's going to keep it under Chapter 61. That's with the assessor's office. That was done a couple weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken?
Less than 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have any stipulation. I've not seen the affidavit. From what I've told, the parcels were incorrect on it. It got sent back to the attorney.
Right.
And it does not have any time frame stipulation in it. And from my reading of Chapter 61, it should say 5 years if this land is staying in chapter and being taxed as chapter land. And I would urge the town to pursue that, along with the other 2 parcels. We're dealing with one family, 155 acres, and it's a lot easier to pursue these 155 acres with one family under Chapter 61. It's such a unique opportunity and situation that we're dealing with here to really pursue that.
So you're talking about pursuing that the affidavit specifies or was intended to be
No,
5 years?
I'm talking about pursuing our right of first refusal and asking the townspeople whether we want to match that $1.2 million that was bought and buy it. It's pretty simple. The townspeople will vote on it and we'll know. But we have a master plan, and that was one of the identified parcels in the master plan. And we spent thousands and thousands and tens of thousands on master plan and feasibility studies, and we're not paying attention to them once they're done. Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Dan Pellegrini, 76 Crooked Ledge Road. As it relates to chapter land, I want to bring up another thing that I think is inherently wrong and needs to change, and I brought it up with the planning board at last meeting. The planning board approved subdivisions on land that's Chapter 61. To me, that's wrong. They've improved the land. And then so what ends up happening is then after the developer has put the road in, they release each lot individually, which means now the town has to pay a lot price opposed to paying the price for it all. The select board should instruct the planning board not to approve any subdivisions until the land is free and clear and out of chapter. It's just not right, and it's done multiple times. And my concern is that's what's going to happen with this land here. So what we're going to do is we're going to rush to approve a subdivision on here, and it's going to become unattainable. Additionally,
That's one thing that we got to look at. The other perception that I just put two and two together, and I think a lot of people in this town are probably putting it together or put it together before me, is I cannot believe that the select board actually proposed that as a site, and then a member of the select board is out there negotiating to buy it, a site for the whole. I'm just at loss for words right now of how the conflict of interest this is. I mean, how can we not even look at that parcel as a potential for the safety complex, and then all of a sudden it becomes in, and now words are maybe the land will be donated, this and that. It just doesn't reek right. And at the end of the day, perception is reality, and I think there needs to be more separation from members of the select board in personal dealings that impact it. I mean, if I just look at the long laundry list of impacts and where people sit on boards, it's just not right. So, at a minimum, I would ask the select board to go to the planning board and instruct them or figure a way that we do not approve subdivisions on land that is in chapter. That must be cleared before subdivisions are approved. And then secondarily, I think we really got to look as a select board the perception that we're giving in the business dealings. If you're too intertwined with businesses, you got to remove from them. I mean, look at the President of the United States. He had to remove himself from all his businesses.
Well, he didn't, but.
Well, it doesn't matter. He gave the perception of it. We're not even given the perception of that. And it's not right. So, again, I risk a lot because I got a lot of investments in this town, but at the end of the day, I'm saying this for what's right for the town. If you look at all the land I own, and I think I have the largest chunk of land in town, it is not in chapter. What I'm developing, a little portion of it is, but not what I'm developing. Not what I'm developing, and I purposely did not put in what I'm developing into that. So, again, I practice what I preach. I'm just not up here throwing darts. So I'd really ask that you look at that, please.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I mean, it makes total sense. We're asking our attorneys what they mean by intent, and can these builders go to the planning board and propose certain things when the land that they're purchasing is in chapter. So I totally think that's a practical
It's even worse than that. The road is put in. It's not just approved. The road actually goes in and it's done. So to me, it just shouldn't even be allowed to put in a road on a chapter piece of land.
Unless I'm misreading the last letter from the attorney, I think your questions are addressed in this letter.
Oh, they haven't seen the letter.
I
I'm
know
so
you
sorry,
haven't.
Charlie.
I mean, the letter-
But
we just released it, so.
I think that's one thing that would definitely stop and allow the town to have the right to procure or
Right. We had asked the attorney to address the issue of what constitutes intent.
Right.
And this letter addresses that in terms of, can you go in front of boards and committees? Can you do this and that? And more or less, I just got it today also, but it's pretty much, yes, you can. You can't put feet on the ground and start doing things, but it makes it sound like you can plan, which to me doesn't seem like the intent of
Right.
the law.
Correct, and planning's one thing, but approval and actually cutting into dirt
Right.
is a whole nother thing. And I understand why the planning would be done, because if you're gonna take a raw parcel of land and you already have it planned and proved, but you haven't put a shovel in the ground, it's worth more. But at the end of the day, the planning board will stop you until you have sign off from the Conservation Commission. Why aren't they stopping anything until there's a sign off from the town saying the land is free and clear before you improve it? And you subsidize your debt. And then, the other thing though is whatever the perception is, I really hope we aren't gonna push for a safety complex on a select board's piece of property. That,
I mean, just to be clear, and I know people are gonna go, it's not a select board's piece of property. It's
Yeah.
a relative of a select board. Well,
Okay.
Relative of a select board
What?
member,
It's not a select board member.
relative of select board.
Right.
oh, relative, yes.
No, select board member, that's what I'm saying.
I just want to say that this process has bothered me on lots of different levels
Okay.
from the get-go. And it
Okay.
has to do with relationships that people serving in different interest. And it bothers me because every single thing that comes in front of the board, I try to ask myself, what is in the best interest of Southampton?
Correct.
And I can't say that some of the longtime people involved in all of these properties, who are longtime Southampton people, I would hope that their motives are also in the best interest of Southampton. We have been down, when our lawyer says to us, you don't have the right of first refusal, this doesn't trigger it, they can buy it, they can sit on it for a year, you can't do anything. It's hard to say, well, no, I don't think that's true. I mean, we're getting counsel from our attorney. We also had other things that we couldn't bring out to the public, which we had to address during executive session, which frankly brought us down a little bit of a rabbit hole for weeks to months that we could not make entirely public. So we had a lot of other things that we were dealing with at the same time.
Understand.
And it's very frustrating because I think it's a huge loophole in the law. I tried to read everything that was sent to me by lots of people about Chapter 61, and there were a lot of things that conflicted between land grants and what our attorney's saying. So it's made it a very, very challenging situation. But more than anything, I'm disappointed in the ethics of people in this situation. Because it is part of our master plan. It is something that a lot of people, very well-intended people, sat around a table and decided what's in the best interest of this town, and then it's been hijacked.
Absolutely, and then, applaud that, and I appreciate the honesty, and that is awesome. It is awesome. It is awesome. The concern I have is all the money, and I'm sure you probably have it, that we've spent in this planning to all of a sudden 180, and now it's becoming clear why we did that 180, and enough said. So, thank you very much. Appreciate
But I think what you're saying, and that's the disturbing part, is we tried to get a hold of it, but we didn't have the option to do it. Legally, we couldn't do it.
No.
And there was myself and several people here went to the planning board meeting, last planning board meeting, a couple weeks ago, to find out what the intent of the builder on Glendale Road was. And for the people who were there, I mean, there was planning. It wasn't if I buy it, when I buy it, it's I want to know what my options are for building on this land. It was pretty darn clear.
No,
and even the attorney says, well, intent, my personal opinion is you can't get much more than that intent when you're going before the planning committee saying, I want to build a cluster, I may develop low income, I may do this. It's great for a builder, and I don't, the builder, that's the job that they do, but the intent was clearly there, but yet we still can't do anything apparently.
And the intent has got to be clear on this piece of property too.
Well, this affidavit signed, I mean, yeah, we can sit and have coffee and say the intent, but we got to look at the facts, and we're stuck.
The facts are, the proposal didn't come out of thin air. Yeah. The proposal didn't come out of thin air, carving a place for the safety complex and houses along the other side of the road.
Well, we as a select board haven't seen a proposal on that.
It was presented.
It was presented here.
But it wasn't a firm proposal or anything. It was, okay, but let's, I mean, we didn't stick our hand in the air and vote on that. I mean, let's make it clear.
The turnip truck stopped at the border of the town.
No, it doesn't, because
So-
you're impinging on people's ethics, and we didn't take a vote, and had we taken a vote, it wouldn't have gone past.
But we're talking intent, John. And that's all. And the intent,
Well, the
when it
intent-
comes forward to say, we're thinking about this, here's an option, here's this piece of property, that intent has to be out there.
Yeah.
And no one's gonna spend $1.2 million to have bushes. All right? I mean, the intent there is to develop it
I
at
don't
some
disagree
time.
with you,
So-
but there was nothing collusion, or we didn't agree as a select board or anything. If it was brought up, it was for information, and we went, whoa,
And all I'm saying is if there was intent over at the planning board, there should be considered intent here, because at some point, the select board got that information from someone to put that drawing out and have that discussion in front of the town, so.
I'll just read what it says here. In my opinion, conversion under the notice statute means the purchaser has actually taken action on the land that results in change to the site, grading, clearing, installation of a road associated with a residential, industrial, or commercial use. Conversely, pursuing or even obtaining permits and approvals that would allow development of the land does not constitute, in my opinion, in and of itself, a conversion to another use. The buyer has not, at that point, committed to taking the property out of chapter land status.
But are they saying when the bulldozers hit there?
Basically, when you put a shovel in the ground, that's the way I read it.
On the ground, but the permits, she...
Understand, but then why at Woodmark?
Right.
Why at Nicholas Way? Was it the other way? I mean, just go back and look at, constantly they're asking for a lot to be released, and then the next week they're asking for a building permit on that lot.
Right.
So
I mean,
we got it now.
What they're
It's
saying
visible
is
now.
that, permits are one thing, putting a shovel in the ground is something else.
But who's regulating that?
Right.
Planning.
And when it happens, should be part of the planning board.
It should be, and that discussion should be had, and there should be a disclaimer signed by that contractor saying, hey, you can get it approved, as soon as you put a shovel in the road, we're not guaranteed we're gonna permit this
Yep.
until you get it cleared.
And I think either we should meet with the planning board or bring them to our meeting or we go to their meeting. We can't order them because they're an elected board, but we can sure
Yeah, and
more
they
concerns.
talked a little bit about the legality of that, but then my point back was you can pass a bylaw on just about anything.
Yeah.
So propose a bylaw on it and put it to vote to the town that
Right.
we don't allow shovels in the ground, or we don't allow this until the land's free and clear and the town has a chance to either take it or not.
Janet, can I just ask you a question about the other issue that came up with the affidavit? Was there an implication that it was a 5-year thing, or is that not part of what came across the assessors?
Janet Kane, 83 Glendale Board of Assessors. On the affidavit, when we did get a corrected affidavit to the assessor's office, it did not state any length of time other than the intent was to leave it in chapter. And what I've read, yes, there should be should remain in chapter for 5 years for the forestry.
Okay.
The affidavit, but it did not state that.
Is it possible for the Board of Assessors to obtain that? An amended affidavit, or no? Because right now, what does it mean to you and your board?
We can pursue that. I don't know that it's legally binding that it has to be a 5-year.
okay.
So I would have to get that clarification.
Okay.
And I think in here, Janet, it says it doesn't have to be 5 years, if I'm remembering.
There'll be taxes due if it's not 5 years.
Right. And that's relative more to the tax collection of it than the right of first refusal, so.
Okay. But what your understanding is that it's being kept that way until you hear otherwise, right?
Yes. I mean, it expires at the end of December anyway, okay, the current contract and chapter. So if they have to present a new plan by October to the DCR and to the forestry in order to get it to continue past December, the new owners.
Hi, Cindy Palmer, 71 Glendale Road. Apropos to all of this is the fact that only a few weeks ago I had never even heard about any of this. I live on Glendale Road. I'm not necessarily in a butter to some of this land, but I care a lot. I like to see planning in this town done right. I want to see the town grow in a way that's consistent, obviously, with the master plan and with the way the town residents want it to grow. I have talked with friends in town. I have been sort of more and more informed. I'm not an expert by any means. And the town is not informed about this. There is very little, there are few people that understand about what's going on in this town. I think that the select board, among many things, including exercising your right of first refusal as soon as possible, not looking for ways to not exercise it, but to exercise it, is really important. But inform your town. Several times in tonight's meeting, I've heard the reference to, let's let the townspeople know about the budget. Let's let the townspeople do this. Let's post that. Well, this is a critical issue. This is about our town, and our town is special because of the open lands, because of the kind of town it is. And that's why I love it, and I support open communication, whether it's some kind of informational sessions, et cetera, to get experts in from other places, not just law, legal experts, conservation commissions, et cetera, and move forward on that. Thank you.
Janet Kane, 83 Glendale Road. About a week and a half ago, I sent an email to the town administrator and the chair of the select board with 2 examples of procedures regarding right of first refusal, recommending that perhaps to make clarification and transparency that the town look and create their document that's reflective of what's already in the state, but put something that's simple to use and people can understand it, and so people really understand what our rights are. And I did not get a response, so I'm hoping that maybe some action can be taken so that we can put something up. This is from Northfield, very similar open space issues. This is another procedure for chapter land and right of first refusal rights, that something can be done from Southampton to communicate to the town what really our rights are.
Good evening again. Barbara LaFlamme, 20 Cook Road. I have attended almost all of these meetings that deal with chapter land, and I have was impressed that John Martin had suggested several meetings ago that the select board call a public forum where residents could learn more about chapter land, the benefits afforded property owners, the rights of taxpayers, but most importantly, the opportunity for the citizens to share their concerns with the select board. I know you've afforded us, Charlie, you've been very generous with the open time for the public, and I acknowledge that. This could be a win-win for the town of Southampton. I believe that in the documents that have transferred the land, there is one section that says, subject to Chapter 61. So that has not been extinguished. I think you still have that opportunity. There is nothing for the property owner to lose. The town would have to buy it at the going rate. The town might raise the money from the taxpayers. We might raise the money from other methods, such as a nonprofit. We, as the town of Southampton, could convey that to a nonprofit. We could convey it to a forest foundation. There are a number of options that are available. What we're asking for is for you to notify the sellers that you would like to exercise the right of first refusal and give the residents of Southampton an opportunity of at least that year to reach a much more satisfactory conclusion. The taxpayer, the owners will get fair market value. That value is established already in the purchase and sale agreement. They're not losing a thing. The only ones that are losing out are the Southampton taxpayers. So I ask you, please, regardless of what Koppelman and Page says, even though it's going to cost some money to get this resolved, this is much too important not to get it resolved. Thank you. And I would like that forum.
Yeah, I mean, I want to do the forum too, because I'm thinking I'm on the negative side of the question is, what if this is the only group that wants to do this? We need to know that, you know, because if this small group is very vocal and the rest of the town says, hey, we're not interested in spending any money or going, so let's find that out too. So that would be at the open forum and then continue at the town meeting, I think. I think it's an important topic to either say yes or no.
Right. Put some articles on the annual town meeting
Yep.
warrant, et cetera.
But I think we should have the open forum, sorry.
No, finish. Done?
Yep.
I agree. I think we should have the open forum. I also think that we've consulted with our attorney around a number of things. One of them was whether or not, what constitutes intent. And we've been provided with that information, at least their decision around what constitutes intent, and it's not just attending meetings and even getting permits, it's actually shovel to the ground. We have asked our attorney whether or not anything that's happened has triggered the first right of refusal, and we've consistently been told no, that the purchase of this land is legitimate, and that they can basically sit on it for a year, and then after a year they can go ahead and do basically whatever they want to it. So every single step of the way, when we've turned to our attorney to get feedback and answers on every step of the way, we're basically told that there's a big loophole, it's not possible, it's the way it is. I think we should have a public forum. I also think that I support sending I support sending a letter to the property owners requesting, as in requesting, the first right of refusal on the properties that they're selling in town.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you wish to pick a day to have a meeting for an open forum for the public?
I would love to do that.
And I guess the question is going to be, do you want to have it here, or do you want to have it at the school? The school.
That's a school, yeah. Because better be a lot more people than this that go.
And I think that anybody, my feeling in this, Bob Fletcher, 22 Gun Road, my feeling from the beginning on this has been, I have no children in the school system anymore. My children all still live in town. But the young families that are using the Norris School, their children are there. I really think that a new school is in our future, and I don't think it's very far away. And I really think if we miss the boat on these 3 pieces of property, we are going to regret it. And that's just my feeling on this. And yep, I'm going to butter to one of these pieces of land. I've got a huge problem at the bottom of the hill on my land, and I know what's coming when they put a parking lot up above me. And I haven't heard anybody come down to ask me, what can I do to help you with your problem before I put a parking lot above you with catch basins and thousands of gallons of storm runoff water?
So we can set a meeting, but we need to give some time to advertise the meeting.
Not only that, we have to clear it with the school department.
Right. So maybe, Ed, that's the first step. If you can find some time.
When the school's available?
Yeah. Evening, open
Here's my
discussion
schedule for the
on
month.
chapter land. Open discussion on chapter land? Are
Yeah.
you gonna have any speakers come in?
We can help with that.
Yeah,
Yes.
there's a lot of speakers.
Yes.
And is it worth getting our legal counsel, not necessarily there? I mean, if she wants to come, we can afford it, that's great. Or otherwise, on a Zoom,
Skype her in.
well, I go with Zoom, but yeah, we'll, if you really want Skype, we'll do Skype, but yeah.
I have a Zoom link too, we can just do
Yeah,
that.
me too, yeah.
The only, and I'm not trying to be the devil's advocate here, but also when you bring in town council, you're running the meter.
It's important enough, I think, to give an hour or two, what does she charge an hour?
Well, first of all, you're gonna get like a 3-hour minimum.
Oh, she wouldn't do that to us, she's been good.
Okay.
We talked to her for minutes at a time, and she just charges us,
I think we can work on the program actually afterwards. Are we coming up with a date now, or
We
couple?
gotta get the school to verify the date's open.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it's like, you know it's not gonna be next week, that's a certainty.
Right.
So you're looking at a couple of weeks from now.
Will you include in that proposals on how we pay for it?
We have to discuss those
It's
options.
gonna be an open discussion, it's gonna be everything from,
And-
yeah, I mean, it's gotta be everything, not just,
Yeah,
I mean, there's absolutely no discussion of why Chapter 61 was created, and that was to protect the farmers because of the fact that they couldn't pay the property taxes in these communities. That's what created that whole section of law. It wasn't so that the towns would have an option to buy land afterwards if the farmers decided to divest their properties.
Yeah, but Charlie, that's a give and take. So therefore, the town giving up our tax revenue, we get the benefit of first right of refusal. So, again, and it's not necessarily getting back taxes when they pull it out. That's not the big thing. The big thing for us is being able to buy it last right of refusal, first right of refusal,
No,
or
I
whatever.
just find it interesting that the origination of that law and all the lobbying was to protect the farmlands and the farmers. It wasn't, that was in there.
Everybody else is taking advantage of it.
Right.
Basically what.
That's exactly what's happened.
Correct, loopholes. So, and again, we can't stop progress, we can't stop that, we can try, we can look at the 61. Could the select board put a motion forward to say, we will not, if this goes forward, consider putting our safety complex on that piece of property? I mean, just the way it came up, the way it routed us away from other things, the way it cost us money, why can't you guys vote that you won't ever consider that?
It's not our decision. It's the town's decision.
You propose what the
Oh,
town
yeah.
votes on.
Yeah.
So if you say you will not propose a safety complex on that, I mean, because at the end of the day, I remember standing in here debating why we were doing it as a finance committee. Why did we just spend $15,000 on a piece of property over here? Why did we spend 30 up here? Why were we spending all this money? And you guys knew the answer. And I understand you couldn't necessarily disclose, you kind of knew what was going on and how it was all connecting. And I guess that I would just ask that if it does go forward and we can't buy it.
Well, you mentioned first, if the current owners go ahead and, we end up purchasing it or something. But if this town decides that somehow we're able to access that land, then it's a different scenario than if we as a town decide to build a public safety complex on that land versus we purchase the land from somebody else.
Yeah, no, I was saying, absolutely. If we bought the land and put a complex there, that's one thing. But under the way it went down, to go commit the complex to the current owners and help subsidize a neighborhood going in there, I would ask that we would refrain from doing it.
Yeah, I don't think anybody has said we're going to do anything like that, nor would we. I wouldn't.
But there was enough of a drawing put out there with a sketch on it to know that that's in people's minds, and that's all I'm saying. But yes, I mean, Maureen, if we spent the 1.2 million, decided to take 20 acres, 15 acres, and put a nice safety complex and build a nice park in the rest of it, or a nice sports, for the whatever, absolutely.
At the time that was presented, there were 6 to 8 properties that were identified by the town and the Public Safety Committee as potential good sites. Letters went out to all the property owners asking if, yes, it was.
Oh, it was.
Was it
Oh,
one?
yeah.
Okay.
It was.
That was a
So
big,
at the
that
time
was a
this
big
whole
one.
thing was presented was this would go right back to the bike trail. There could be a parking lot for the bike trail. There could be a public safety complex. So that was in the context of 6 to 8 properties that we wrote to landowners asking if they'd be willing to sell the land. So it was a little bit in that context that that was presented.
No, and that's fair enough. Now, you don't think any opportunities were gleaned by the responses of those letters from individuals?
What do you mean?
Like, wow, this piece of property is for sale. Wow, I could pull this all together because I'm getting some information that's not privy to the rest of the public.
It was actually all wide open to the public.
So we saw the responses of those letters. Those were all published.
Everything on the screen here, I had
It's
it
all up
overhead
there.
showing the
Dan, can I just mention something that actually April was at the podium? So I didn't know that if she was done at the time.
He can keep going.
Okay, I just want to make sure that
No,
you
no,
weren't- you
I'm
kinda
done.
stepped-
I'm sorry.
Are you sure, April?
It was important, and he was.
no, I know it was important.
He
It
was
was-
in timing, because my next question is, if a shovel goes in the ground in the next year, starting from March 1st, or December 31st, right? So if the shovel goes in the ground through next December 2019, what are our legal rights? What can the town do?
Well, that's when if I remember, our first right of refusal comes in. So that's our legal right. What will we do with it is the real question.
Okay.
And that's what we're going to find out at this forum.
So we can use this time to have our public forum and find out what the town really wants to do and put our eggs in a row and get ready to do that.
But I
So
don't
that's a
think we should-
positive thing.
I don't think we should wait too long. And
No,
I think
I
at this
don't think
forum,
so
we should have folks like the Kestrel.
We have a lot of interest, yes.
Yeah, and if I remember right, you told me about a meeting you went to, and there were several different funding sources there. Kestrel was one of them. There was.
We are working on several different funding sources,
So to have them at this forum would be very nice, because if I'm voting and I know my taxes are going up to buy the land, my vote may be different if somebody says, well, we have some funding.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so Ed's gonna track the school down, try to get us some dates, then we'll take and post the date. You guys will put together something relative to what the talk is gonna be, presenters and all the rest of that. I'll talk to the cable company about trying to get a camera out there so it can be televised, and we'll go from there.
I think that's one thing we have to have. If they can't do it on a certain date, then we move it to another date. If we don't have
I'm
it.
not worried about the cable doing it, I'm worried about getting into school.
Okay.
That's the issue. So, all right.
What about the other issue that I brought up? I mean, I know that our attorney said that nothing is triggered first right of refusal, but I feel that there's no harm done. I'm not putting myself in any legal jeopardy by sending a letter to the Wayne family requesting the first right of refusal.
We can do it. I mean, they may say no, they may not answer us, but it doesn't hurt.
They don't have legal control of the property now.
That's right, no.
Why not?
They sold it.
All of them?
No.
I don't know about, I just know that, and we just heard, the transfer took place on the College Highway one. I don't know about the others.
But
Cindy,
there's still that subject to the right of first refusal.
But it wouldn't be the Waynes we'd go to in that case, because they don't own it
They're the
anymore.
ones that are selling, they're conveying it.
But it's sold already.
It's in the deed.
But that's what happened with Sudbury.
Right, but it's already sold, so the new owner has to go with the chapter.
That's a cloud on the title.
Yeah. It's got to stay in chapter 61. Is that what, that's what the title says, you're saying?
Subject to right of first refusal, chapter 61 or whatever it is.
So doesn't that mean, just hearing what you're saying, that if they try to take it out of 61, we get the first right of refusal?
They sold it. They can sell it, but they don't have, the new buyer doesn't have title without a cloud. There's a
Right.
cloud on the title. Maybe when they sell it to the first subsequent buyer, they may not be able to get a mortgage. There are, and in fact, their title company should convey that concept to the buyer
Yep.
and every subsequent buyer.
How did you find out about what's in the title? Did you look it up under?
I've seen the deed.
Is that something we can get a copy of?
oh, yeah.
So, it's just, it's in the registry already? Okay. No.
May I suggest we have town council review this request because of the transfer?
But by giving, well, yeah, we can just tell the town council, they can go in electronically and look at the deed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. Because if there is loophole, let's look at it.
All right. Ed, would you mind asking town council if we can send that letter, and if we should be sending that letter to the seller, or should we send the letter to the new owner as well? And Barbara, I have all the respect in the world with you,
I know.
but I also look at the fact that I sit here as the chair of the Board of Selectmen,
You're right.
trying not to get the town in the middle of a legal suit to spend money when it would be just as easy to ask town council to make sure we're not going in the wrong direction.
You're right.
That, you know,
No disrespect, we did ask several meetings ago that you folks would reach out, and you
Right,
did
right.
say that Councilman King said that you couldn't reach out to the Waynes.
You want to take a shot at it?
Everybody said there's no harm in
Okay.
asking. So we did ask for you folks.
and I know you did, and I know Copeland and Page said no.
It's got to be more general, that's all.
And we
Copeland and Page said
That's why
to
it took
me
us time for him. I'll help you.
that no, you can't do this. I didn't get it in writing.
We asked you folks, we kept talking about time is of the essence, and we asked you folks.
I'm gonna have to bring you to that podium.
Cheryl Fletcher, Gun Road. We asked you folks to really, we were very concerned about the time. And so last week, this is exactly what we were afraid of. We asked you folks to reach out to the Waynes, because I even said, and I know in one of the recordings, that Brad Mitchell said, there is no harm reaching out to the Waynes. There is no harm. And you said that Copeland and Page told you that you couldn't. And Farm Bureau said there's no harm reaching out.
I have no, I know Brad, I've worked with Brad for years. Brad is hired by Farm Bureau as an advocate to lobby for farm positions. He does not have a legal background.
Okay, but-
I'm trying to get legal opinions to protect the community.
But we have other legal opinions that are contrary to what, I know you have to listen to Copeland and Page, I get it. But we asked just to send a letter to say, because you're right, the Waynes don't care if it's 1.2. Yes, they probably cared that it would have taken us a while to get Kestrel and APR and everything together. But this is important to the town, whether it's the safety complex or a new school or affordable housing. It is important, and we really asked you folks to reach out to the, we kept saying we don't have time. And so you have to understand the frustration, because it's going to happen again on Glendale. You know, it's going to happen. And I would, we've spoken to attorneys that said, no, that housing development, you know, everything that was just said earlier, that's intent. I know Koppelman and Page is saying something different, but we've got other attorneys that say, no way, that's intent. So we are in a mess.
Is there another attorney with the right credentials that's willing to put that in writing? Pardon? Well, again, we're bound by what our legal counsel says, and you guys are out there saying, I have an attorney, but...
If we have an attorney put it in writing, it's just the attorney that we've spoken to. So if town council has it, I mean, I feel like we're just going to go back and forth in terms of...
Well, if there's a different
there's
legal
different
opinion...
interpretations of, you know, of the Sudbury case. You have to remember, the Sudbury case came about after the sale was completed.
Yeah.
So we're in the same, Sudbury is exactly what is happening here.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We've been discussing this now, I'm going to say tonight, for about since November. Ed, can you please check with Koppelman and Page and see if we can write a letter to the seller and to the purchaser asking about this again?
Yep.
And find out in writing so we have something to demonstrate. You're going to find some dates for the school. You guys are going to work on putting together an open forum for discussion. And when I say, I mean everybody.
The royal we.
Yes, and we'll all get together on that. So I'm going to move off of this topic now, and I'm going to change the schedule and say, is there anyone here for open time to the public? Because all the other stuff we have is pretty much boilerplate stuff, and I don't want you sitting here if you want to say something else, because I pretty much left the podium wide open anyways.
Charlie, I just want to, I have to say something else. And that is that we already asked our attorney about the sending the letter. And we were told that, you know, we don't have the right, it's not triggered, all of that. I frankly don't see where we get into legal jeopardy by sending a letter to the Wayne family requesting first right of refusal. How can that, I know we had huge legal fees, and we've, you know, hopefully been working on getting rid of suits and getting rid of problems and bringing down our attorney fees. But driving up the attorney fees to ask a second time whether or not it would be okay to send a letter to the Wayne family just doesn't make sense to me.
I don't have that opinion in writing. It was verbal to me.
Right, and that's another problem. That's another problem. Because I think there's been many steps along the way that should have been more in writing. And one of the things, I'm going to go ahead and share with you something that has sidetracked us a big time on this project, was that we were informed that there was a donor who was willing to donate the money for this property. And it's anonymous, so I'm not revealing who it is. I have no idea who it is. But this put us down a rabbit hole of at least 10 to 12 communications back and forth, and it ended up at a dead end. So this was another complication of this whole process, that at the same time we're getting advice and we're trying to go by our legal advice, we're also being told that there's this wonderful thing that's going on, and there were people that were willing to concede so that this could happen for the town, and then it all went down to a dead end and never happened. So that was what was going on for many of the months that we were having executive sessions and we were not able to bring this to the public. And so that is, I just want you to know that that's been another huge complicating factor. Do you want to say anything more about that, John?
Yeah, and the donation was specific to buy the land for the safety complex. And, you know, obviously, if we could have got the land at no cost to the town from a donor, again, we can't go into a whole lot of details, so we pursued that heavily. It just didn't work out. We don't know if it was just not real intent or it wasn't, but, you know, when you go through attorneys, you don't know the other side's intent. But we had our fingers crossed for a long time. We thought we were going to be able to get that land. Didn't work out. And again, we couldn't say anything at the time. We really can't say much now, but you know, it's good that you know what took a lot of our time up.
Open time for the public. I am going to exercise that since I'm here.
I want to make sure she's all...
Yeah, are you good, Maureen?
Yeah, I feel like we should send a letter to the Wayne family requesting first right of refusal.
So,
and I feel we should have verification from Koppelman and Page.
So it's up to me.
It's like the swing vote's in the middle.
Actually, no,
No.
because there's 4 members.
Well, one's abstained, yeah.
Yeah, I can't
Is
see how
that-
we could
I
vote
mean,
on this.
from my point of view, if it's a matter of asking legal to send the letter, I'm fine with doing that, because if she says, no, you can't, then that's our answer. If she says, well, I'm not sure, I say send the letter.
And
You
I'm
know.
fine with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that good?
Yeah.
So you want to make that motion?
I'll make a motion that we request our attorney, Coupleman and Page, to send a letter to the Wayne family requesting first right of refusal, if that
It's appropriate.
is appropriate. That we would like to request that we send a letter to the Wayne family.
Unless there's sound legal grounds why we can't. I mean, I don't think it should be just because somebody's opinion, we shouldn't. Is that, okay, I'll second that.
On the 2 remaining properties.
Did the clerk get that?
But also College Highway's talking about too, yeah.
All in favor?
So it's clear, that's all the properties, 3 properties.
So, you're gonna send letters to the sellers of all the properties?
You want all 3, right?
Yeah, it's the same.
It's the same family.
Same family, yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For all of them.
Take a vote.
I'm waiting for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so moved. Now open time for the public?
Okay.
Hi, Dan, welcome.
Yeah, surprise. I've never been at these. Over the past couple of years, I've been kind of pushing a little bit on some road maintenance and using our Chapter 90. I believe the process from asking this over the past couple of years is this time of year, the highway superintendent gets in his vehicle, drives around town, looks for bumpy roads, and determines what goes on the list.
That has changed.
Okay, what is the new process
They
then?
have the town has hired a company, I think it's Pioneer Valley Planning, but I could be wrong, to do highway assessments of the entire town and to score them. And I believe the town administrator has a copy of that report. I would suggest you get a copy of that report.
Okay, and Ed, is that true? There's a new methodology on scoring roads for Chapter 90?
Not for Chapter 90,
It's for all roads.
for all roads. in town.
So in particular, my question is, who dictates where we allocate the funds or suggests where we allocate the funds? The last I heard, it was Randall driving around, looking at the roads with his foreman and assessing which ones. So my question back is that still the process as to where we spend our Chapter 90 money? And if so, the second question would be, where does Crooked Ledge Road sit in that mixture?
I think you first need to get that report.
And it's a draft. So,
Okay.
the town did enter into an agreement with Pioneer Valley Planning to do a pavement management study for the town.
Understand.
So I have a draft. It hasn't been finalized in my office, so yeah,
Okay.
if you want to look at it.
Perfect.
Might be a pain to copy, but if you
No,
want
I
to copy it,
understand.
I'll be happy to.
I understand. My question is this year, though. So if they're going to do the study this year, where's our money?
It's done. The draft study's done.
So the study's all done, and we're going to use that to.
That's the intent, yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
like
So
I
instead
said,
of the
they-
drive around, we're going to
Yeah,
use the
no,
report.
Hey, I like a less subjective approach to it. My concern was we weren't going to have it in time for this year, because we got to start our planning now. I got to think.
Yeah, no, they, like I said, we have the draft. Randall has sent them back his comments on the draft. They haven't incorporated it into a final plan.
Okay.
but
Yeah. No,
I've got
I'd love to see it. I'd love to see where we are on
Yeah.
Crooked Ledge Road, and it's getting worse and worse day by
Okay.
day. So appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else open time to the public? Going once? Going twice? Virginia, you've been silent. You okay? Okay. All right. I'm closing open time to the public. We're moving on now to, there's no personnel change forms, there's no licenses, so we're going to go into warrants. I've signed off W18-33A for $34,098.07. Warrant W18-35 for $176,508.29. Warrant PD 18-36 for
A little loud, I can't hear it, sorry.
$41,541.46. PD 18-34A for
And then I couldn't hear you.
$160,845. P 1836 for $265,687.52. That brings us up to date on our transfers for monies to pay bills and payrolls and stuff. Our annual, we're gonna be required to put a warrant together. Warrant for annual town caucus? There's no warrant for annual town caucus.
Yes, there is, but the town clerk has pulled it back because she has to make a change to it, so.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
She reads it every
right,
caucus.
okay, so that's gonna go on for the 20th?
Yes.
Okay. Minutes approval, March 22nd, 2017 minutes. No signature or approval needed.
That was for minutes from one of those meetings that was posted for, like the East Street Bridge or whatever, but there
Which
was not a quorum, so.
Right, it was just sort of
We've made a synopsis of that, but there are really no minutes to approve. Same with the April 26th and the July 14th minutes.
So we have to do the minutes of approval for June 24th, 2017, September 18th, 2017, January 23rd, 2018. Have everyone read those minutes?
Yes, sir.
Are we all comfortable with the minutes?
I have a question about one of them, just bringing it up now.
East Street.
So on the minutes from June 24th, are we doing them all at once?
We can do them singly, all together, whatever works.
Yeah, I only have one comment on the minutes for June 24th. That was the one that was, the one that we met in the parking lot and walked, I think, over to the East Street.
Mm-hmm.
So you didn't do these minutes, Kathy? They were done by the administrative assistant of the highway department.
Yes.
It says here, Charlie stated that the buildings are not yet classified as substandard but are in dire need of repair. So that was based on the, tour of the public safety, of the old town hall.
That's right.
And the next thing says, he also is working on obtaining additional land around the police department to aid in enhancing the site. I think it should say the select board or the town as opposed to Charlie.
Yeah. That's fine by me.
Which would you prefer?
Select board.
Select board. That was it. I just think that just change.
Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes with modifications?
Are we doing them all at once or just those minutes?
There was 3,
Are we doing all of them, including January 23rd?
just the ones that don't
Just the
say
ones
not
that don't need
approved.
approval.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just the ones that need approval.
So we're
Why would you be approving the
We're
right?
doing June 24th, September 18th, and January 23rd.
I have a comment about January 23rd. It says under reports, select board, Ms. Grove attended the housing board meeting and there is a plan to review where things are at. Can I just make a motion to change that and have it say that I attended the housing board meeting and the members reviewed the most recent activities of the board and the chair also agreed to regularly pick up messages and mail for the committee.
So, I'm sorry, I did that, the members review.
The members reviewed the most recent activities of the committee, and the chair will agree to regularly pick up messages and mail. Because it just says, and there's a plan to review where things are at. They actually, I just wanted it more clear.
Okay.
That's it.
Do I hear a motion to accept the minutes as modified?
So moved.
Or a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved and approved unanimously. Let's see here.
January 23rd ones, I
Calendar and announcements, Selectmen's meeting, next meeting is March 20th. There is a meeting this Thursday. It is a meeting in executive session. It's not going to be an open time for the public at all.
There's a 6.
So this Thursday, there's an executive. Yeah, I don't have the calendar in front of me. March 20th is our next scheduled Selectmen's meeting.
Well,
The-
15.
Well, the
Budget
normal
one.
meeting, the regular
Well-
business
Budget one, the
meeting.
15th.
The regular
Business.
Selectmen's meeting is March 20th. There's a meeting floating out there on the 15th to discuss the budget.
Right. And there's one on the 8th executive session, and one that Ed's going to set up for an open forum.
Right, and then we're looking at April 3rd for town caucus,
Yeah.
and we're looking at possibly the selectmen's meeting is gonna be that Wednesday, April 4th. Because we can't have the caucus at the same time we're having the selectmen's meeting in the
Right.
same room.
Well, the caucus is on the 2nd, board meeting's on the 4th.
I thought the caucus was on the 3rd.
Is it on the 3rd? Okay, so I've got the wrong date, thank you.
This is the second time we've corrected that calendar.
Yeah, I'm just checking on you.
How am I doing?
Good.
April 4th would be a regular.
Wednesday, a regular selectmen's meeting.
Can you make it, Kathy?
I think so, yeah.
It's often, isn't the first Wednesday the local school committee?
Third, yeah, we shall see.
Third? Okay.
Your meeting on the 4th?
No, the fourth Wednesday.
Oh, meeting on the 4th.
She better hurry it up. It's gonna be covered both places at the same time.
I can multitask.
Okay, calendars announcements. We still got the invitation for Worthington to participate in their 250th celebration parade, June 30th of this year. I'm not gonna go through the articles. We're now gonna go into executive session. Under Mass General Law, we're not gonna come back to open session. Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Number 6, to consider the purchase, exchange, lease of value of real estate if the chair declares that the open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiation positions of the public body. We're talking Glendale Road, and the chair does declare. Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Item 7, to comply with and/or act under authority of any general, special law or federal grant and aid requirements. Approval of executive session minutes for January 23rd, 2018. I will need a roll call vote to go into executive session.
Do you have a motion to go into executive session?
I need a motion to go into executive session,
I'll make a motion, we go into the executive session.
Second.
and it's been seconded. I need a roll call vote.
Broden, aye.
Martin, aye.
Konecki, aye.
Labrie, aye.
We are now in executive session. There'll be a 5-minute break. Thank you, everyone.